Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Columbus Common Council's Committee of the Whole special meeting, Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Time is now 6:33 p.m. Pat, would you please take the roll?
Adams? Okay, he's not logged in yet. Gray, not logged in yet. McCabe is excused. Pifferone?
Here?
Reed?
Here.
Ryan?
Here.
Tome?
Here.
And Adams is in?
I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay. This meeting has been noticed with state statutes and local ordinances. If there are no alterations, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
Alder Pifron will make a motion to approve the agenda as indicated.
3 seconds.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there anybody opposed? Okay, agenda's approved. Number 4 is citizens' comments. I did have one person signed up this evening under citizen comments, but I think that person is going to speak during our committee of the whole meeting, not the special meeting, on items 8 and 9. Is that correct, Hannah?
Yes, I'm here to be present for that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who wished to speak this evening during citizen comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to number 5, is review and discuss temporary staffing at the wastewater treatment plant. And for that, we have Administrator Kyle Ellison.
All right, thank you. So it's been about 2 weeks since we met last. We continue to piece together the day-to-day staffing at the wastewater treatment plant with a combination of DPW staff, some water and light support, and then the lone remaining wastewater treatment plant staff member. We were really, with the DNR, they asked us to get an operator in charge, which is someone trained and more specifically trained in the sampling, the test results, the reporting, and it serves as more of a quality control position. And we talked previously about Beaver Dam being an option. A couple different things happened there, and we went as far as getting an MOU developed and presented to them, and then it kind of fell apart at the last minute. And so we went the other direction that we had already established, which was Midwest Contract Operations. They're out of the Fox Valley. So we did pursue them. They actually, I think, had some staffing shortages of their own in the meantime since we first talked. But we were able to get them down actually to the plant last Friday to meet with staff. And I think even with John Namer to help really understand the plant and how things are run and what the needs might be. The plan was to have a contract on Monday that could be reviewed by the attorney. I got a call on Monday afternoon from the head of the Midwest Contract Operations and basically said after talking to the DNR, they wouldn't be able to help us. That's been, unfortunately, a common theme. It seems like things are going well, and then for whatever reason, when they talk to the DNR, it seems that the deals fall apart. I talked to the DNR today, to the supervisor that is over we have a direct staff member, and then I talked to the supervisor that's over that direct staff member, and just sort of tried to figure out what are the options at this point. And they understand the predicament we're in because we can't make something happen if there's nobody available to do it. They're very happy with our recruitment plan and that we're moving forward and we're actually doing interviews tomorrow. So that they're willing to let the status quo go for a short time as long as we continue doing everything we're doing now and we continue moving towards a final solution. So we, like I said, interviews tomorrow. Very hopeful that we get a good candidate for the operator A position. And so when we get to the regular meeting, unfortunately, there won't be anything to approve, so we can just table it and move forward. Just knowing that if the interviews don't go well tomorrow, we will have to come up with some other solution, which the DNR is probably going to have to help us figure out what that is, because I can't get private industry to help and I can't get municipalities to help. And it just seems like on a statewide basis, this is a significant shortage in this one specialty. So I think we have a path forward depending on results, but at this time, we won't have anything to approve in the regular meeting.
Thanks, Kyle, for that update. Do you have several interviews scheduled tomorrow?
We do have several interviews. The operator A, which is the higher level operator, is extremely limited. We just have a single candidate for that. On the flip side of that, the candidate that we have seems to be very well qualified, very experienced, and is actually familiar to some of the local staff and actually with our plant. So we're very optimistic that that will work out, and we're ready to make decisions pretty quickly to make sure we can lock in a solution.
Okay. Paul, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. Let's say, fingers crossed, it does go well tomorrow, but let's say it does not go well tomorrow, and we're in even more of a bind. It seems like we're really having a hard time with recruiting. Is there and I know there's other issues at play that I'm not going to mention right now, as far as salary. I mean, is there any possibility of bumping up the recruitment or what's the potential salary this person could get, because if we're having trouble supply and demand, so I guess,
Yeah, you could adjust compensation. You could offer sign-on bonuses. There's a variety of things you could try so that would be the longer term, to try to get an additional pool of applicants that didn't apply the first time. And then in the short term, I would probably be shopping around to more communities that might be more distant to see if they have flexibility to help us, as well as looking at engineering firms potentially all over the state that might have operators that are certified and experienced, which not every engineering firm will have that, and you would be basically paying them the oversight at their regular hourly rate, which would be relatively expensive. So I do have some other avenues we can go down if we need to.
I don't know if I know private industry does this all the time, but I don't know if municipalities are even allowed to, but could you use a temporary employment place? I mean, I don't know if they even have that position. They have nurses, they have attorneys, whatever. Could you maybe reach out to some temporary recruitments and recruiters, even if they have to headhunters or whatnot?
Well, I could look into that a little further. We went to Wisconsin Rural Water, which is the statewide association of the operators and the licensed plants, and they didn't have anyone available to help us, retired or active. Midwest Contract Operators, they run plants, but then they also have these arrangements with other municipalities where they provide some oversight and some coverage. They ended up not being able to help us either. So we may have to go out a little further. It's not something that your traditional staffing agency is going to have, though. It's a very specialized, and you can't even take the education for it and just be ready to be an advanced operator. My understanding is that it takes several years, like 4 years, to actually get that advanced designation. And so, even if we had a bunch of people coming out now, it's going to be 4 years before they were qualified to really step fully into that advanced role.
And I think we spoke a little bit about that previously, about what we can do to try to avoid that type of situation in the future. And potentially, we talked about a little bit about Water and Light, having some folks over there that are going to be cross-trained or start that process to sort of give us, another level of security and something to fall back on.
And to piggyback off that, while we're in this process, and perhaps we're doing it already, but could we have somebody from Water and Light right now, maybe talk to the DNR and start having them get prepared even as we speak? So then I know it's still a long ways away for them to get certified, but
Yeah, so we currently have two staff. One of the existing wastewater treatment plant staff is already on the emergency certification path, and at the same time, the water and light water staff is going through that same emergency certification path. So they're both moving as fast as the DNR can have them move. You can only take a certain number of exams and certification tests at one time, so it's going to be a few months to get there, and then even once you're certified, you need that experience. So I mean, there's multiple levels that we're trying to I guess address at the same time, and the operator in charge designation is something that won't be solved short term through these emergency certifications, but will build over time as we, I think, try to maintain Water and Light having that certification as well as us. And then reciprocal, I think we would be trying to have additional water licensing with our wastewater staff so that if Water and Light found themselves in that situation, we could help them in that same way. So there's also conversation about, if there's DPW staff that would be interested in having an add-on, and going for the certification, learning, that might be a potential, and then there would just have to be some kind of compensation linked to that flexibility that would afford us.
Fair enough, thank you.
Any questions on Zoom or comments? Okay.
No, feeling hopeful that one applicant will truly be ready to go and interested. I'm glad to hear about the cross-training probabilities coming up.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Tome?
Just wanted to be clear then, the recommendation at the regular meeting then would be just to table item number 1 in anticipation of what we'll learn very soon.
Yeah, I think it would be to table it or take no action. If everything works out tomorrow, there'll never need to be action on temporary staffing. We'll continue down our other paths that we're going on now, but there wouldn't be a need for a separate sideline contract to address that short-term absence of an operator in charge.
Okay, thank you, Kyle.
Okay. With that, I think we can move on then to number 6. So just for everybody watching on Zoom, before I go ahead and read this, we are going to be going into a closed session. We do have a separate Zoom link that we will be entering. We unfortunately cannot have 2 meetings open at one time. So what we are going to do is council members will participate in the closed session under the separate Zoom link, and then we will be back to host the regular meeting afterwards. Approximately, I don't know exactly, but I would say maybe 7:05, somewhere along those lines. We should be entering back in, so you'll just have to check back with us, and we will be back this evening with the regular meeting under this same Zoom link, which will be closed out shortly. Okay, so number 6 is to convene to close session per state statute 19.85 sub 1 sub G to confer with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is likely to become involved.
Make a motion to go into closed sessions for the reasons read.
Okay,
All the pipe will second that.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to move into closed council, or to closed session. Pat, would you please take the vote?
Gray, he's not logged in yet. McCabe is excused. Piperone.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Tome.
Aye.
Adams.
Aye.
Hi, can everyone out on Zoom hear me all right? Okay. Thumbs up, okay. All right, Lisa, we're ready. All right, good evening, everyone. I've got 7:08 p.m. I'm here to call to order this meeting of the Columbus Common Council regular meeting for Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Pat, if you could please take a roll call for us.
McCabe is excused. Piperone,
Here?
Reed,
Here.
Ryan,
Here.
Tome,
Here.
Adams,
Here.
and Gray is not logged in yet.
All right, thank you. If able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting has been noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances, and the next item is to approve the agenda for the evening. Unless there's any alterations or deletions, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Alder Ryan, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Oh, were we tabling one?
And to table number 1 for the time being.
Okay.
Alder Piperone will make a second on that motion with tabling number 1.
We have a motion, a second, to approve the agenda for the evening with the tabling of item number 1 under new business. Any discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? All right, the agenda's been approved. Thank you. Do we have anyone for correspondence and communications this evening? No one signed up. All right, thank you. Move on to the consent agenda then. The consent agenda, we have the Council and Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for February 15th, 2021. Application for operator's license for the term of July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2022. We have one name in the packet, and that's Sylvester A. Weisensell. And then we have an application for a picnic license for St. Jerome's Church Bingo with the dates listed on the agenda. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? If there are no questions on the consent agenda, I'll take a motion to approve as submitted.
Alder Piperone will make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Alder Ryan will second.
I have a motion and 2 seconds to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Move on to new business item number 2, since number 1 has been tabled, which is consider and take action on the Columbia County 2021 Hazmat Agreement. This is something that we do annually for the city. It's been reviewed through the Committee of the Whole meeting. This would be an agreement for hazmat coverage for 2021, and the money has been budgeted in 2021 for that purpose. Any questions on the Columbia County Hazmat Agreement? If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve that agreement.
There's a motion to approve the 2021 hazmat agreement with Columbia County.
Alder
Alder
Ryan
Piperone.
will second, sorry, Paul.
Get a motion from Reed and a second from Ryan to approve the 2021 Columbia County Hazmat Agreement. Any discussion on the motion? If there's no further discussion, let's please take a roll call. Pat?
Piperone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams,
Aye.
and Gray and McCabe are not present, so motion carries.
All right, thank you. Move on to new business item number 3. Consider and take action on the CHLPC recommendation regarding the bid for Phase 3 of the Pavilion project. There's information in the packet. This is coming directly to the regular meeting rather than the Committee of the Whole, because we reviewed that, I think it was late last year or early this year, and you've gone through the bidding process. There was one bidder, and the recommendation from the HLPC is for the Thoughtful Craftsman, the proposed amount of $64,600 for the window replacement, final phase at the pavilion. If there's any questions, we have members of the HLPC here this evening. Adams or Reed have any questions on this? See no questions. Paul? Katie? All right, no questions. If there are no questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the recommendation and to accept the bid for the Phase 3 of the Pavilion project for Thoughtful Craftsman.
Alder Ryan, I will make a motion to take action on the CHLPC's recommendation regarding the bid for Phase 3 of the Pavilion projects and awarding the contract to Thoughtful Craftsmen.
Reed second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the bid from Thoughtful Craftsman, the amount of $64,600, the recommendation of the CHLPC. Is there any further discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion on the motion, could we please take a roll call, Pat?
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams,
Aye.
Pifferone,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. Move on to new business number 4. Consider and take action on the acceptance of the donation to the CHLPC for Phase 3 of the Pavilion project. This is a companion that kind of goes along with the bid. Now that there's been a bid awarded and there will be a contract for that work, the city just needs to accept that donation along with it. If there's any questions, again, we have HLPC members here this evening. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the donation to CHLPC for Phase 3 of the Pavilion project.
Alder Pfeiffer will make a motion to accept the donation to CHLPC for Phase 3 of Pavilion project.
Adams seconds.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the donation to CHLPC for the Phase 3 Pavilion project. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for all the work that you've done on that. I know it's been some work to compile that, and definitely appreciate the work. It'll be nice to see the project finished up this year.
Thanks a lot.
Yep.
And I just did want to say, if I could just approach
Sure.
real quick. Hi, John Salzwedel from CHLPC. I'm the vice chair. I just wanted to say again, thanks to the council and the administration and the mayor for working with us on this project, and it's been a learning process to say the least. I would also like to say we're really pleased that the one bid that we did receive from Thoughtful Craftsmen, even though building materials have doubled and in some places tripled, they gave us a very, very respectable bid, very similar to what they had last year. So we're happy to work with them. And my only just side note is in the contract, it says 100 days from the time of the contract. I would like to just make sure that that's from the time that it's signed so that they have the full length of time to get the job done.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Move on to item number 5, consider and take action on the Plan Commission recommendation regarding the certified survey map for Columbus Elementary School at 200 Fuller Street. Before we jump into this, I just wanted to mention that there was an email sent out from Matt Schreiber this evening at about 4:20 with some updates from the school. My understanding is that that email does not have anything to do with item number 5, which would be for the certified survey map. Is that correct, Matt?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right. So if there are any questions on the CSM, Matt's available to answer them. I think this was reviewed at the last committee of the whole, so go ahead, Matt.
The only other thing I want to interject about the CSM is, you'll notice on the CSM, there's a easement for storm sewer. And the CSM will essentially create that easement in some areas. We do have a draft easement agreement that Paul has crafted in conjunction with the school's attorney, that will be coming to future meetings to basically specify,
Okay,
Just wanted to make everyone aware of that.
all right. Any other questions for Matt? If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the recommendation from the Plan Commission regarding the CSM for the Columbus Elementary School.
Alder Pfeiffer will make a motion to approve the recommendation from the Plan Commission regarding the certified survey map for Columbus Elementary School at 200 Fuller Street.
Alder Ryan will second.
Motion from Pfeifferon, second from Ryan to approve the certified survey map for the Columbus Elementary School at 200 Fuller Street. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Now we move on to item number 6 and 7, which I do believe are relative to the email that we received this afternoon. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to review the email, but today staff received a revised set of plans from the school for their conditional use permit for the elementary school and the high school. There was a link provided to the plans for the council to review. I tried to look at them on my phone for a few seconds, but there was no way I could go through them and compare to the last set. Staff does recommend, if council chooses to approve this tonight, that staff request to make an approval upon with the contingency on staff review and revised plans. The other option would be to table the item and bring it back to the next regular meeting for approval if there are any concerns about the revised set of plans, or if the council wants to hear any concerns or any recommendations. So it's up to the council as how you'd like to proceed on that.
I too did not get a chance to look at it. I looked at briefly on my phone as well, and without having the ability to compare, I would make a motion to table this until that time.
I agree with that.
So I also,
Are there any time constraints?
Not from my understanding. I talked to Jason briefly before this, but staff hasn't really had a chance to review these as well. But I don't know that anyone's going to be breaking ground in the next 2 weeks, from my understanding. I'm sure people like to receive things sooner than later, but it's important, I think, for staff to review the revised plans.
yeah, I was just going to say, I'm in agreement as well. It was just the short time frame in which we had to review these. I think it should be expected that we sort of put it off and take time to actually see the revisions and then bring it back to the next regular meeting, which is in 2 weeks. So
Yep.
it's not crazy time frame.
I would also, ask the question. Again, without being able to compare, are the changes clouded? Will we know where the changes are? Do we know?
I don't know that, but I think it's up to the appropriate staff to review those revisions. My question to Jason was, maybe these are revisions that were being made that were recommended by the Plan Commission. I don't know that yet, but I think it's appropriate for staff to kind of go through and review it and say, here's what the revisions include or entail, and to get a recommendation from staff on
Yeah.
those. Yeah.
Thank you.
Most of the revisions came from the staff level, and there was a letter from the project team that should have been in the Dropbox that I included, that basically addressed their comments to our comments, essentially. I know Jason hasn't had a good chance to get through them all. I've looked at them, but I haven't got through them all yet myself. So that's where it's more of a staff level review to make sure, more so than the Plan Commission comments. So.
I think I heard some consensus that maybe we just table this to the next regular meeting. I don't think this needs to go back to the cow or anything like that, but I think then we can have a better summary from staff as to what the revisions are and if there's any concerns before final approval. Is anyone opposed to tabling that? How about we get a motion in a second to reflect that?
Alder Ryan, I'll make a motion.
Did we already? Did you make a motion, Paul? And did you second, Katie? Okay.
Oh,
All
sorry.
right. Thank you for taking notes. I got lost in the discussion. So we had a motion from Piperon and a second from Adams to table item number 6 until the next meeting. Is there any discussion on that? If none, all those in favor of tabling, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? All right, we'll have that tabled and then return to the next meeting with the updates. I believe we're looking at the same issue for item number 7, new business as well.
Alder Piper will, for the same reasons, make a motion to table item number 7.
Alder Ryan will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table item number 7 for the same reasons. Would be returning to the next meeting. Any discussion on the motion to table? If none, all those in favor of tabling, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Okay, we'll see that back in 2 weeks. All right, move on. Item number 8, consider and take action on claims in the amount of $2,981,895.71. Obviously, that number is again increased because there was lots of tax dollars being paid out to other taxing authorities, such as the county, I think was 1.8 million, and another 800,000. Or no, that was the Columbus School District. So that's why that number is high. Are there any other questions on the city claims? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the claims in the amount read.
Adams moves to approve the claims in the amount read.
Alder Piper will second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims as submitted. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, can please have a roll call, Pat?
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Piperone,
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Move on to report of city officers. I'll turn it over to City Administrator Ellefson.
Thank you. Just a couple quick updates. City Hall staff have been assisting the municipal court with some limited administrative duties for starting this week to help them in the clerk's absence. They did interview candidates today, so I'm hopeful that it's only going to be a short duration that we're kind of filling in for them with some limited administrative help. Also, wastewater treatment operator A and B interviews are tomorrow, and we're hopeful that we come out of the day with 2 solid selections, and hopefully we can return to full strength very soon at the wastewater treatment plant. And then finally, over the past 2 weeks, I had a chance to attend a League of Municipalities roundtable for mayors and administrators, and also a webinar with the co-chairs of the state's Joint Finance Committee. So there's a lot of discussion about the state budget, which is kind of ramping up in the coming months. And there's a lot of discussion. Some items are positive for municipalities, others are potentially having a negative impact, but it's very early. So it's hard to know what it's all going to mean in the end, but it's the one item that I've been hearing a lot about is transportation funding from the state. And so there's potentially some agreement there, and hopefully there'll be some meaningful adjustments in the funding mechanism, and so I think that's just encouraging that issue that is kind of all across the state is hopefully being looked at from both parties, and there's some common ground there. So we will wait and see what that turns out to be. That's all I have.
All right, thanks, Kyle. I didn't have anything prepared tonight, but I did want to thank the people that participated in the public information meeting last Thursday for the transportation utility. I was able to zoom in and watched most of the meeting, and I think there were some really good questions. Good to see people in attendance, and thank the staff for putting that together and fielding questions and taking feedback. And I believe that's still continuing. There's a link on the city website for that. So that's all I had. Unless there's anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Alder Ryan, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Alder Piper will second that.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? We'll stand adjourned for a few minutes and return with the committee of the whole meeting. Thank you.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me on Zoom okay? All right. Time is 7:35. We're at the Columbus Common Council's Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Pat, would you please take the roll call?
Adams,
Present.
Gray,
He's not on.
I thought he
did
was
not
on.
log back in. McCabe is excused. Pifferone,
Here?
Reed,
Here.
Ryan,
Here.
Tome.
Here.
Okay, this meeting has been noticed with state statutes and local ordinances. Number 3, I guess I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
Alder Piper will make the motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Adams seconds.
Okay, I do have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, agenda's approved. Citizen comments, is there anybody, I don't think I had anybody signed up on Zoom to speak at the comments section this evening. So we will move on then to number 5, which is the committee and commission minutes. Tonight we have the CHLPC from 2/15/2021, the Columbus Water and Light from 1/21/21, the library minutes from 1/19/21, the PFC from 12/2/20, and recreation from 12/14/20. Are there any comments or questions on any of the committee minutes within the packet this evening? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on then to number 6, which is update. We're going to receive an update on our the transportation utility draft ordinance and credit policy. For that, I'm going to turn it over to Administrator Ellefson.
Thank you. Just a quick update on events happening since our last meeting. We did have a public information meeting last Thursday, and there was a good amount of participation, and I've had several meetings, I think, leading up to it, and some questions that followed up as well. Like the mayor alluded to in his comment, a lot of good questions and observations, and there's still comment period, so if people have comments they'd like to share, they can still send those and fill out the form for the next several days. And so, I think there was a lot of observations, which was good and interesting, and staff have been kind of taking a lot of that information into account. And, I think we're ready to continue moving forward if the council would like, or if we want any other path, we're available and ready.
If you wouldn't mind if I made a few comments. I was, as I had mentioned at the report, I was able to Zoom into the meeting and have received a few emails as well since the public information meeting. But I felt like I needed to kind of share some concerns with you this evening before we kind of jumped into the agenda item and the information we have. Again, I think there were good questions from residents in attendance, and this exploration phase is intended to collect comments from the community about this in attendance and as well as online. After hearing the concerns raised on some of the issues, I've just tried to take a few seconds to step back and reflect on things. First off, I do fully support the idea of the city exploring a transportation utility as an option to address funding shortfalls which have existed long before my interest or involvement in city government. This is not a new issue or just a Columbus issue. This is becoming even more apparent knowing that other communities either have or may be considering this option as a sustainable solution to a growing problem. I also likely support it because I have a different perspective and level of understanding from serving in local government for the past 8 years. I've been the part of a lot of in-depth conversations about street projects, budgeting, et cetera, that has kind of revealed a lot of details that maybe just, the average citizen's not going to understand when they're notified of an issue like this. So I also believe there are still a lot more details that haven't been discussed yet in depth that still lead me to believe that this may be the best option for the city. However, I also recognize and respect that most residents that haven't been exposed to what I have, again, will have a different perception or a different reaction to an idea like this, especially when there's potential for paying additional fee for a service. So with less than a week behind us from the first public information meeting, the main thing I wanted to share with the council this evening is addressing that gap between, where the concerns are that we're receiving and looking at the timeline to consider the adoption of an ordinance to create a potential transportation utility. I'm concerned about the optics. I think those are very important. The intent is to fix a structural funding problem that the city has to deal with ultimately. We can't borrow our way out of this problem, but I don't want this to appear to be rushed because that's not the intent. So in short, I hope the City Council might consider slowing this process a bit to allow for time to shape the right solution for Columbus, allow time for the next council and mayor to get on board, take up the issue, and continue discussion. There's important work, information, and public feedback that's still being collected in this exploratory phase. I think all of that needs to be compiled, preserved, and considered by the city ultimately. This is a very important issue that the city needs to find a long-term sustainable solution to, and as much as I'd like to be a part of providing that solution with this city council, I don't believe there's adequate time to establish genuine consensus within the community in just a few meetings. That's just my opinion, but I wanted to open that up for discussion before we dive into the details of refining an ordinance, et cetera, just to see how the council feels about that. So, thank you.
Trina, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Tom. I guess I felt a little bit rushed ever since hearing about the transportation utility. It really hasn't been very long, and around the time that we heard of its existence was when we were debating about, possibly that idea of could we make a ballot measure in time for April or not, and it's just been a bit of a whirlwind. So I would definitely like to really slow the process down, do some in-depth research, and I would prefer not to be one of the first municipalities in the state to test this out.
Alder Piperon?
I'm going to echo both Mayor Tom's sentiments and Alder Reed's sentiments that I think we need to slow it down, not make any rash decisions, and make the best informed decision after we have more information.
If I could just chime in as well, I think the biggest thing for me is that the public is informed. I think that from what I've learned about the transportation utility, I think it's a very viable option, but I do think it's important that the community is on board and that they truly understand, what this would do and what this would provide and how it would work and how it would be a benefit to them. So I think at this point there just hasn't been enough time to really go through that process. And I hope that the council continues to, the future council continues to look at this as an option. Because I do, from everything that I've learned, I do think it's a viable, sustainable way to solve a genuine issue that we have in this community, to which we've heard feedback from long before we began this discussion about our roads. And it also provided sort of a better way to allocate more money for other issues such as stormwater as well. So I hope that the future council continues to go down this path and really hopefully educate the community and give people time to, get on board. So that's my hope. Any other comments from council?
I think I had, other bullet points and things I wanted to mention as well about, I think, the benefit of allowing a little bit more time and space to develop the right solution for Columbus is, you know, I wish that we would have known about this option a year ago, I guess, but we didn't know about that. So, I mean, just the way that the timeline kind of is occurring, I think creates some bad optics. But, you know, there's other things that we can't control either, like the uncertainty and the economic impacts of COVID. We're coming up on the year anniversary of that virtually, so it's been a really rough year on people. That's why I think if you can slow it down a little bit and get people a little bit more comfortable with the idea, you know, COVID is a very good reason to consider that. I think that there are some silver linings, though, because some of the comments that I've been hearing from people, like I said, I have a perception of 8 years of hearing about things that just kind of, you know, I can put dots together and go, well, yeah, that makes sense. But you need to allow everybody else to kind of absorb that type of logic to understand why it would be good for the city ultimately. There are people that I think that don't like the idea, but they understand why the city is asking this question, because we have limited options for a sustainable solution here. There are other solutions, obviously, that future council consider, such as putting together a referendum. I know we had talked about a stormwater utility before. We're talking about a transportation utility, but if the city wanted to go to a referendum, you can tailor that to a very specific need for what you're trying to address. So, I mean, all those things can be part of a conversation as it moves on. I think also having some precedents. There are a few cases right now that we can look at, but I think if you want to be a little bit more comfortable with not being the lab rat, so to speak, if there's any questions about, you know, either legislative or judicial precedent, I think taking a little bit more time to see if this is challenged in another community is a benefit for Columbus as well, to take that worry away from residents. So, and also, as Kyle mentioned too, I think state budget, you know, I don't want to get my hopes up, but if there is an area that they can agree on and hopefully start addressing this issue, they know that local municipalities have been struggling with this for years, and it's an ongoing issue as well. So I think that's something that the city can also do, is send letters to our legislature to let them know what our concerns were and why we're kind of in the position we're in right now and considering things like this. So.
Alder Pfeiffer.
I just have a random question maybe, but has anybody reached out to like Nina or Pewaukee and asked? I know Pewaukee is probably newer, but do we know how it's working there for them? I mean, are they having success or?
I haven't reached out directly to them. You know, I think as they're designed, there's a lot of local variations there, and so I think as time goes on, it'll be interesting to see how well they work. But depending on how, you know, if they're established just to eliminate special assessments, or if they're, you know, based on a different method of determining how the users would pay, that all kind of creates a unique situation locally at each one. So I think there could be some lessons learned as time goes on. But I'd be careful about drawing too many straight line conclusions just because they are so unique.
Fair enough.
Well, one thing I do think that staff is going to need some direction on, or at least some consensus tonight, is it seems like people are in favor of allowing for more time and more conversation to develop this plan, but there is a public information meeting that's scheduled for, I believe, next week. Is that something that the council wants to continue with? I know from attending the meeting last week that it was kind of intended to kind of go over some of the same things and discuss some of the concerns were brought up at the first public information meeting, but I think that the staff is going to have some direction on whether that occurs or we just kind of wait until after April. I think there's probably still information that's being compiled from the comments and feedback that was available either on the city website or at the meeting, so that all needs to be compiled as well for the future city council. But I think they're going to need some direction on what you'd like to do as far as that next public information meeting.
Alder Gray.
I would say we should cancel the public information meeting for next week and continue to compile more information and talk about it more. I think at this point we're not ready for that meeting.
I'm gonna agree with Gray. I'm really glad we had the public commission meeting last week. It was very informative and, it was illuminating to hear a lot of the concerns. And I really don't think we'll have any helpful information for next week.
Mayor Tolman.
I would agree as well. I think that there's a lot of information that can still be compiled, but I think you don't know where you are until you find out where you are, and I guess that initial reaction kind of is a gauge that I'm using as well to say, okay, here are the amount of concerns we have, and here's the timeline we have, and there's just no way that you can deal with all of that in a couple of meetings. So I think kind of just taking a step back, maybe cancel the public information meeting and regroup. The information that's still there is still going to be beneficial. As I said, this issue's not going to go away. There's going to have to be a solution that the city's going to come up with, but it shouldn't be in a rush. So I think canceling the public information meeting is in the best interest as well.
Are you saying cancel or are you saying reschedule?
Reschedule, yes.
Okay, any other comments? Okay. Guess we will move on then to number 7, which is review and discuss the potential DNR grant for stormwater management. And so Kyle, are you going to head that off before you hand it to Jason, or?
Yep, I'll
Okay.
just kind of introduce it, and then Jason's here as well to provide maybe some more details or answer questions about what role Rupert-Milky could play. So the Wisconsin DNR has their Urban Non-Point Source and Stormwater Management Grant. That window is open right now. It does close on April 15th, and there's a couple steps involved in applying for this. I'll probably let Jason cover what this grant could potentially offer as far as benefits. The important thing to know is that Rupert-Milky, if the council was interested in pursuing this grant, Rupert-Milky, they do have experience doing it, but of course, if they're going to devote staff time to that, there's a cost that goes along with that, and it's $4,000 if the city council would like to utilize Rupert-Milky to apply for this grant. And Jason, I don't know if you want to add some more?
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. So this grant is a once every 2-year grant, and the grant that's available right now is for the planning purposes for stormwater management. There's I guess a sibling component that goes with this that is for construction, and that occurs on the odd years, so it kind of flips every other year. The reason I brought this to the attention of the city was because Kyle's right. As a consultant, we apply for maybe anywhere from 6 to 10 of these every grant cycle, and they're a very successful grant program with the DNR. They fund a lot of projects. What this grant does this go around would focus on planning. That would kind of be for what we've been talking about. We've kind of been discussing in the past stormwater, and looking at a comprehensive picture of where the city's at, where from a stormwater management planning standpoint. So this grant pays for 50% up to $85,000. So again, it can pay up to significant costs for that kind of study purpose. If you apply for it now, the award would happen later this year, and the grant would start the first of next year and run for 2 years. So it would be eligible for 2 consecutive following years. So if you're thinking ahead, this grant's not going to be around for a couple more years again, probably 3 more years before you get the eligible funds allocated again. So this is kind of an idea here that I had mentioned was if you are considering some of the stormwater concerns that you've talked about in the planning, those reports can run tens of thousands of dollars, and this obviously could match half of that. Now, I will tell you it is a competitive grant because it is one of the grants that are funded favorably by the state, and a lot of communities apply for it. But we do have communities who hit and have success with this. So it is just a mechanism out there. It is a grant. So, it's not a given that you'll get it. I think the city's been very fortunate with their grant success of late. But I just wanted to make sure that the city had the opportunity to consider this if they are, looking at still moving that stormwater aspect forward, probably in the next 2 years or so, if they're going to be doing some planning. This would kind of fit with what I've been hearing you guys discuss. So it is something that does generally apply to water quality as well. You are in the Rock River watershed. You have TMDL limits for the city. Those are all things that this covers. This can cover ordinance rewrites or updates. I know there's been some discussion about redoing the zoning and the stormwater and subdivision erosion control ordinances. This would also cover that. If we wrote it, we would certainly add that in and include that piece of it. So there are some different components to this, not just the study itself, but the education, the outreach, the inventory piece, the enhancement of the GIS system, so that, we can look at this from various factors and see if we can, achieve or score highly on the grant because of some of those things that you guys have been discussing. So it is something that we just wanted to bring to your attention and see if you were interested. It is due April 15th. One of the things we would need from the council would be some kind of acknowledgement and a supporting resolution. The state wants to know if they're going to give you money that you're going to step up and pay your 50%, if you will. So they like to see a favorable resolution passed that can be put with the grant application. But there's not too much more to it than that. I mean, we certainly would want to work with staff to further define what those components of this grant might be. And, obviously there's a scoring system. You get so many points if you're eligible for certain components of the grant. So we would hope you would score pretty well. We know there's a need. We know that there's certainly something that you guys are looking at pursuing. So it is something that we certainly can help with. So we just kind of wanted to offer that out there to see if there was interest.
Alder Gray. Question for Jason?
I mean, yes, 100%. I would love to apply for the grant, and I mean, having Rupert Milkey help us do that would be the best idea. It's exactly what we need right now. We need to figure out the long-term plan for our stormwater, as well as rewriting ordinances and figuring everything out. This fits perfectly with where we're at and what we need to do. So it'd be awesome if we could get it. I would also, if possible, if we could get the resolution onto the next meeting's agenda, that would be awesome.
Alder Reed.
Well, so my initial reaction was, I guess this sounds wonderful, it sounds perfect. But then I was wondering how much would the study likely cost? Like, would it be likely cost $10,000, $15,000? Receiving the grant isn't a for sure thing, and I'm going, okay, if it costs $10,000 and you would get, half of that back, but we're also paying $4,000 to provide the study, the math might not come out in our favor. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I'll try and answer that, Trina. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what the study might cost. We're working with the Village of Oregon right now, and we're looking. They're going to be what they call a MS4 permitted community, which has a higher level of standards. They're not right now, but they're planning on. So they're pursuing this grant because they're preparing for that, and they have a lot of things that they're going to need to do, and it's going to cost a lot of money. All of the items that I had mentioned earlier, they're estimating somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000 worth of effort over the next couple years worth of work. I don't see you guys being that high, but if you're going to do a full-blown study, and some of these other components, you might be half of that. And so, again, if you're looking at a 50% match, you could be looking at, $25,000 worth of grant money here. So I think that's where it would fall. I mean, it might be slightly higher, or it might be slightly lower, but I do think that's kind of where I would maybe estimate this right now.
Thank you.
Alder Adams.
Just a quick chime in here. I think the
think the benefits outweigh the costs for this. I think it's something that we've been talking about for a long time. And I would highly encourage everybody to move forward with this one. Thank you.
I too think it's a good idea, and I think we should move forward with it.
I won't be here maybe after the resolution, but I think that this is something that fits the city perfectly right now, as we've been talking about stormwater issues moving forward. And I think the other concerns about the financial part too is applying for it now gives you time to kind of continue the discussion about budgeting the matching funds that would be needed. If that would fall into the fall, then the council can start including that conversation into the budget about how large of a planning project it's going to be. I think also with the CDBG close project that we have, there's kind of some moving parts right now with stormwater that can all be kind of included into that. But yeah, I would be happy to see this resolution at the next meeting personally.
I concur with everything the mayor just said, and as well as Alder Gray. I think this is perfect, and it's great timing for the city right now to really get a detailed assessment of where we're at and where we want to be. So I'm definitely in support of moving forward with this. So it seems like at this point we have some consensus to just move forward with this, bring a resolution. Then you'd bring that at the next meeting. Is that correct, Jason? Okay. All right. All right. Wonderful. Thank you. We are going to move on to number 8, which is review and discuss the application process to keep chickens. And for that, this evening we have Pat Gable, who's going to cover some of the information in the packet here about the current process, correct?
Correct.
Thanks, Pat.
We do have a new application submitted from a resident to keep chickens, and that kind of started this process to review and talk about updating the current process, which is a little bit cumbersome. Back in 2015, we had an ordinance that was adopted and an application approved to allow the keeping of chickens. The ordinance requires, among a few other things, is an application fee payment, and then the clerk notifies all surrounding properties or neighbors within 200 feet of the applicant, and an inspection by the building inspector. The application fee is $25, and the license fee is, the application fee is $25, and the license fee of $15 does not come close to covering the cost of getting this process started with staff time, copies, mail inspections, et cetera. So also the application does state that each person who keeps chickens has to apply for a license by January 1st, and that really doesn't happen. And I think part of that is the lack of process to get this done. I did reach out to a few of the people who had applications on file, and that sort of just started this process, this thinking that this needs to just be reviewed and looked at. And it's just been kind of a difficult thing for me to get through and try and explain to people who apply how we're going to do this. So I had a few conversations with Paul and with Kyle and with the mayor, and just came up with a few ideas just to start a conversation. Paul came up with a few ideas, perhaps, and a few things are listed here, maybe making the application permanent. Revising the ordinance would have to come into play for that. If that's an idea to make this permanent, that the license is granted just to the applicant and it stays with the applicant in that property. Another thought would be to look at and update the current application, so it's a little, it's better understood. Discuss creating a process and application renewal if that's the route we wanted to take rather than a permanent application. Review fees and update the current ordinance. So there's a few things that we brought up to discuss that are sort of just in flux, and I guess that's, opening up conversation for any of those items.
I guess I read over this, but maybe I missed something, but is there a specific number of chickens that are detailed here? Is this from 1 to 10 chickens? Is this from 1 to 100 chickens? Is it 4 or less?
It's 4 or less.
Currently, the city allows 4.
Okay. And no roosters? Gotcha. Okay. I personally, I like the idea of making the application permanent. I think it's kind of trivial to make somebody apply over and over again every year without prompting, and unless, of course, there's some, I guess, are we concerned with like the habitat changing too? Are there other things that need to, like, it would prompt them to have to reapply if they made changes to that habitat, or does that need to be inspected? Or, so that's one of my only issues with making the application permanent. Go ahead, Paul Piper.
I would concur to that. Rather than let something go in perpetuity, at least on a annual basis or every 2 years, having it inspected and saying, okay, this is still matches the intent of the original application we have in file, and if there are substantial changes, then, sort of like the conditional use permit, I guess, the only way I can say it is, if this is still not in compliance per the original application, then at that point in time, the permanent permit would be rescinded, or have the potential of being rescinded.
So are you suggesting that the city be responsible to sort of mail these things out annually and say, if this is still the same, then you're fine? Or if
I think that's sort of like asking the, apropos for this, asking like the Fox and Fall the Schittler there, he'd say yes. So I think we'd have to, somehow, like, whether, I know it's at a cost, and maybe that's where the price comes
Right.
in, have the building inspector go and just, make a site visit, just a 15-minute site visit, just to make sure that it still matches what they have in file. Otherwise, 10 years down the road, all of a sudden somebody sneaks in 20 and, and nobody's there to verify it. So I think somehow we need to have accountability.
Alder Reed.
I guess I was thinking perhaps more like a 5-year permit, that quite honestly would probably be more in perpetuity unless there's an issue. But I feel like 5 years gives a little bit more time for the structure to start having problems that, might need to be checked on. I'm not sure how long chickens live, but it could be up to 10 years.
Part of the problem with this is the effort to keep track of it, both in the city clerk's office and with the actual license holder. The original thought was if you had an annual application, it'd be just like a dog license.
Right.
That notice would go out, or the person would just simply remember that, hey, I have to get my license renewed every year. That doesn't happen. And trying to keep track of the licenses in City Hall is becoming a bit of a problem. That's why we thought of going to a permanent license. And if we go to a permanent license, then, and to be honest, the enforcement mechanism is going to be complaint-based if a neighbor decides to complain. A neighbor will most likely complain if there's 10 chickens when there's supposed to be 4. A neighbor will most likely complain if a person's chickens are all of a sudden running across the neighbor's yard as opposed to their own yard. And that would be the idea. By making this complaint-based, you're eliminating the cost of the building inspector going out and doing a annual review or semi-annual or every 5 years or whatever, and you're saving the clerk's office a lot of time. So I mean, we're really looking at this, at least right now, and this is a council decision, but we're looking at this right now from trying to save those fees. Another way to address that, of course, would be to increase your fee from the $15 to much more in line with what it really costs, which is probably a lot closer to $100 by the time you're done with the inspector doing his thing and Pat doing her thing.
Alder Gray.
And I would be in favor for it being a permanent license, honestly. I mean, we're talking about 4 chickens, and I really don't see the need for this to be an annual thing. I really don't want to see the fees go up to match what would be required for us to keep it annual, because I think that kind of negates the purpose of people keeping chickens in the city. A permanent license, I don't see there being an issue with it, and I think if it got out of control in a home, almost certainly there'd be a neighbor complaining about it, and they would bring it to our attention. I really don't think there's a need for building inspectors and all the extra costs. And even mailing out letters to neighbors saying that there's going to be chickens, is that something that other communities do when somebody gets chickens? Is that normal?
For the initial application, yes.
Okay.
After that, no.
Okay, yeah, I don't see a purpose in that, but if that's standard, that's all good.
Yeah, that's a good point,
I think
Ian.
permanent license would be best.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point in that after the license is granted, if your neighbors change, somebody sells a house, buys a new one, they don't get an update, so they may or may not know that there's chickens. I guess, being complaint-based, I'm okay with that. I don't see a genuine issue spiraling from this that wouldn't be caught by a complaint. That's my 2 cents. Just like with other animals and maintenance issues, I think in general of structures. Did anybody else want to chime in?
Oh, I did want to ask about the bees.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any separate thing for having bees besides the chickens? And it looks just a little tight with her and her neighbors for having a beehive, but I guess that might be her neighbor's call. I don't know.
So Trina, that is on the next item, yeah. That's like,
If the council is comfortable with turning this into a permanent application, I can make the revisions to the ordinance and bring that back to the COW for review at the next meeting, and then we can move it forward from there, kind of tighten things up.
Mayor Tome?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention some of the other recommendations under the update for the ordinance if it was going to become permanent. And I think the DATCP portion of that is important. For some reason, I thought like we had that discussion earlier about revising this ordinance and the benefits of having that. I think Kyle probably knows more about it than I do. We talked about that component briefly, but I think there's some benefit to having that, which I think is either free or almost no cost.
I think it's either free or low or no cost, essentially. The big benefit is that it's an animal health mechanism, and if you have any zoonotic-based diseases or viruses that would get an outbreak in the state, they can more easily track down where they need to address that. So that they could, if they had a certain disease breakout, somewhere in Columbia County, they can drop a pin on that and do a circle, and they know exactly where those livestock are before it spreads across the whole state.
And I think it's just good to have the redundancy with the state, so if something got missed or lost here, you would have that to refer to if that was a requirement within the ordinance. So I think that would be a good addition.
So if we went to this permanent status, the fee could remain the same and just be essentially the one-time fee, which would come close to covering at least the one time of doing that is, or is your suggestion to also raise the fee and make it permanent?
Well, I think I guess either way, you're gonna have to change the fee. Because
Okay.
it's just not covering costs. And, if you only have to do the one-time mailing or the one-time inspection or whatever you have to do, it won't cover that, but it won't have to be repeated. So, you could have the one-time fee for, let's say, $100 or whatever, but you won't have to pay it again. You'll have a permanent license unless there's a complaint, and then it would be brought forward and reviewed at the council level.
Okay. Mayor Tom?
How much does it cost to send the building inspector out to do a site inspection for an application like this?
I'm not sure about the new people, but the previous inspector would probably be close to $100.
And I know there's been occurrences where there's had to be multiple visits to sites. I think that's what the staff is kind of trying to address, is that if there's,
I think just part of the the applicant has to have everything set and ready to go, has to be inspected and whatnot, and that's understandable. But you have to send the inspector out to take a look at all this stuff, and it may or may not go, and, the expense is already there. The expense is here, whether, if the clerk notifies 5 people or 20 people. In the case of this application coming up, there's probably 17 letters that went out. So, with a copy of the application and everything else with it. So, there is that initial cost.
I just have a question in terms of, is there a reason why we don't have the applicants pay for that fee independently like we do with, like, building inspections? Where they're required then to get that inspected, and then prove that to the city before us approving this application for them to have chickens. I think that would take some of the burden off of city staff and having to run around and schedule these appointments between these two entities. And then also, if they needed a second inspection, that would also come from them, and it would give them the incentive then to be more prepared initially, just like you would with the building inspection.
Yeah, and I think that could be built into the ordinance, Paul. Would that be correct?
I can certainly try, yes.
Alder Gray?
You took the words right out of my mouth, Katie. That's exactly what I was going to say, is why don't we just have them pay for the inspection prior to granting a license, and that's part of what they bring to City Hall to get their licenses, the inspection. Aside from that, what about, instead of mailing things out to neighbors, would it make sense to have, as part of their application, something signed from all of their neighbors acknowledging that they intend to keep chickens? Like, put it on the person to get signatures from their neighbors?
I guess for myself, I would prefer having the city contact the neighbors, just not to, make discomfort in person between, people living next to each other.
Well, currently, Ian, the ordinance states that properties within 200 feet of the applicant's address have to be notified. So I don't know if your applicant's going to know who those people would be. You see what I'm saying? I can I can
They're-
figure out who
they're-
they are,
They're not gonna go out with a yardstick, so that makes sense.
yeah.
Alder Reed.
You might want to consider changing that 200-foot rule to just abutting landowners. That would bring the circle down considerably.
Go ahead, Alder Reed.
Thank you. No, I thought that was a great idea, Katie, for having, the individual need to pay for the inspection, and that way it's on them if, the inspector needs to return. I would lean towards keeping the application fee, to the city fairly cheap, like $25 or $35. So at least, on the city end, it's still pretty reasonable. And I kind of like the idea of leaving it 200 feet. Chickens, they, can be a little annoying, and depending on how it's positioned, and if there might be a beehive, they're gonna fly. So, and I kind of like leaving the distance.
Any comments to Trina's distance or comments on distance? Go ahead, Ian.
I think making it abutting properties would make it a lot more simple, but I do see where Trina's coming from with the distance, because some of our neighborhoods, the abutting properties, sometimes there's going to be a property that's actually really close in some of the neighborhoods, but it's not technically abutting. So I do understand keeping the distance. Part of me wants to just go to abutting properties because that makes it far simpler for the city and less letters, but I think Trina's right. The distance probably does make the most sense in some areas.
Okay. Alder Adams, you had your hand up. Did you still want to speak?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to clarify something real quick. So as far as the chickens are concerned, are they, as part of the city rights, are they confined to the enclosed spaces? So they're gonna be behind some sort of fencing, they're not gonna be free-range chickens, from what I understand. And if that's the case, I would be, either way, but I'd be fine with just the abutting, as long as, the chickens are behind fencing or something like that.
The ordinance requires the chickens to be in an enclosure, and that is part of what the inspection is. And just to clarify too, now, with the 200 feet, that's just the notification. So just, you're just notifying people within 200 feet that this person's applied. So I guess I just want to make sure that that's clear, that it's not, you're not going to be 200 feet away from the chickens necessarily.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's not what it is. It's 200 feet of the applicant's address is who's getting notified. Okay.
Okay. I guess I'm still okay with the 200 feet. I think Trina makes a good point. And I'm okay with, if we leave the application fee, I guess, at that point, if we're not having the inspector go out, basically what we're having staff do then is send that notification out to those properties within 200 feet. So is that, or am I missing something in addition to that? They would just be notifying them. Then you just have the staff time and the copies in the mail. Should we raise that portion to 35? Should we talk about 50? I guess I just am trying to gauge as to what would be an appropriate fee to cover that. And then I think just having that building inspector separated will save on some of that time and money that the city was putting up.
So you want, the building inspection would be on the applicant?
Correct.
Okay, so we would have to bring forward an upgraded application then as well to show that.
Okay. And the application fee, then, if it remained $25, do you feel like that would be sufficient then for just the copies, your time that, or should we consider having that raised too? Because we are talking about this being one time versus, every year. So just curious what the recommendation would be. Would that remain appropriate of the $25, or since we're not requiring, a fee of $15 in the following year and the following year, but we're not doing any of that other follow-up either, should we just raise it to 35? Should we keep it at 25? That's what I have a question about, so. We don't have to, do we have to decide today, or is there?
No, you can decide the fees later, but just remember the fees, as currently drafted, the fee is a two-part process. It is a $25 non-refundable fee that comes along with the application, and that was intended to defray the cost of the building inspector and Pat doing her notices. And then the actual license was the $15, if I remember correctly.
Yes, okay. I thought it was a renewal fee of $15. That's the way I was reading it, but,
Right. So,
got it.
Yeah, so that is the renewal fee also, I
Right.
believe. But there's a two-part process, so if you're gonna take the building inspector out of the mix, then you might wanna just look at doing a one-part fee, non-refundable for X amount of dollars, and then you're done with
Sure.
that. Instead of the two-part fee.
Thank you. Alder Gray.
I think that would make the most sense, is just figure out what the dollar amount of a one-time, one-part fee, since we're separating out, if we are separating out the inspection.
It seems like we have consensus to separate out the inspection, rather. So should we just have some feedback gathered, or do we want to just set a number this evening?
If Pat's comfortable with a number, if she knows what the number should be, then we could, but otherwise I think we should probably figure out what the number should be.
Okay. Alder Pfeifferon, you're going to speak?
I would say, I just shared a sentiment. I'm for moving this forward. I think as far as a one-time fee, I think that's great. What that fee should be, right now we're saying it's $40 essentially. I think 25 and 15. I think if you just made it a one-time non-refundable fee of $40, that would probably be problem solved.
Alder Gray, go ahead.
The thing, like Paul mentioned, the part of that $25, part of that was intended for, like, some of the expenses going into the inspection and things, so if that's separate, that $25 isn't necessarily needed anymore. So I don't know, 40 might be too much for the one-time fee if they're paying for the inspection separately. I think deferring to Pat for what she thinks the fee would be, or figuring out what the fee should be, would be our best bet, instead of putting it at 40, because that could be entirely too much, honestly.
I'm not sure that, I don't know when this ordinance was written, but I can imagine that it's probably not up to date, considering if the $25 was made to offset a cost of an inspection, which probably, probably close to $100 now, so I would imagine that the $15 fee is probably out of date to what it actually costs as well. But I think the easiest thing to do would just be to look into it and come up with an estimate, and bring it back to council. Mayor Tom's got his light on. Go ahead, Mayor Tom.
I think the ordinance was passed in 2015.
Oh, not that long ago.
There's been a few conversations at the council about trying to update this, and there hasn't been a lot of progress on it, and I think that's why Pat needs some clarification on how things are going to work moving forward. There has been, I think, a lot of mixed, not a real solid consensus on what the fee should be. I think we knew back then that we were losing money on all these, and as Pat said, I don't think that the attempt is to recover every penny to do it, but if it is going to be a one-time fee and you're not doing an annual update, I think there are other hidden costs that you need to consider when you look at the license revocation process and everything else up there. You know, you're not gonna be charging anybody for any of that if it happens, but it's part of the ordinance, so to speak. So I think there's other things to be considered. I don't think $50 one time to have chickens on your property for forever is unreasonable personally.
Yeah.
But I think it would be good to have Pat just kind of maybe give a recommendation to say, on an average application, here's what I have to do, and here's, you know, it's gonna be different every time, but here's an average cost. Even if the inspection doesn't need to happen, I think there are still other costs that go along with that. We have to keep it on file here at City Hall, et cetera, and there's communications that happen. So I think just getting a recommendation from Pat to say this is what we believe the actual costs are, and then just kind of determine that at the committee of the whole meeting when you review the updated ordinance, makes sense to me.
Okay. Ms. Reed?
Oh, I'm just kind of wondering if, most cities have a building inspector do the inspection. I think it might be like $10 to have a chicken in Madison. And I'm just wondering how, other places that, you know, our cities handle it.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Being in a community that had a chicken ordinance, the zoning administrator, which was also the village administrator, got the pleasure of physically inspecting every chicken coop and basically reporting back that all of the ordinance requirements were met. That was a little different setup where people did, depending on the type of coop, whether it was fully enclosed or if you could see the chickens but they were in an enclosure, there was different requirements about notifying your own neighbors and bringing in signatures of people within a certain distance. Again, the difference being, is it something you can see and potentially hear more, or was it in a completely enclosed environment? But there are multiple ways to accomplish it. It's a matter of what the standards you want the inspection done to, and then who's the most appropriate staff member to conduct that inspection.
Thank you. Yeah, it just seemed like just a little much to have a building inspector come out for $100 to, you know, inspect a kennel with a roost.
So I guess in other municipalities, I don't know how this works, but is it $10 a year? Is it $10, are we talking $10 permanently? Do they have to have an inspection? Do they, I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of other ways, but.
Yeah, so again, I think this is one of those that you can structure this in a lot of different ways. The one that I'm familiar with was a initial application that triggered an inspection by the zoning administrator, village administrator, and then after that, they got a renewal form mailed to them that essentially all they had to do was send back in, you know, $15, $20, something like that, along with signing the application saying, and nothing has changed. I'm still meeting all the regulations. And thereby you didn't go back every year and dedicate any resources unless there was complaints that said something has changed. So there was that recurring, there was a recurring revenue. There was a recurring assurance from the applicant that they were meeting the standards as well. And as people move, you know, if you issue a permanent license, one of the issues is that, you know, how do you know when they're keeping chickens and when they're not? And is it, you know, how does that transfer from property to property? And that was a concern that neighbors had in that community about integrating livestock into, you know, potentially their neighbor's backyard.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just, wanting to look into other possibilities that, you know, if there's a staff member that could go out and check to make sure the kennel has a top and there's a roost and some bedding and some water and that kind of good stuff. It just seems so over the top for a building inspector to make sure the structure is upstanding.
Are you volunteering for that, Trina?
I'm
Yeah.
actually kind of afraid of chickens.
Oh, wow. Okay, Alder Gray.
So I can definitely see that both ways. Maybe if we went that direction, would it be enough if they submitted pictures of the structure that they did along with their application instead of having an inspector go out there to see it? Like, I mean, they are really simple. It's not like we're talking about a complex building. Like, if they provided photographs of the chicken coop along with their application, could that suffice? Or maybe photographs and signatures from at least 2 neighbors to verify that the structure is on their property, so that way we don't have to send anyone out to inspect.
Is there a way we could send this to Plan Commission, every application, and have them review it? That'd be great. No.
Ken, if you want to.
I mean, I guess it's, to me, it's like it's a structure. It's a small structure, but it's, I mean, it's not much different than, I don't know, we've been talking about solar panels for what seems like a lifetime. Kyle?
A plan commission may not be completely out of the realm. It really depends if you're looking at this as a issue of structures or if you're looking at it as an issue of land use. And land use really does have a lot of, applications in the plan commission realm. So that may be a direction you want to head. It really is up to, sort of the council's will on which way they feel it's best addressed.
I guess for me, just imagining having city staff spending a lot of time reviewing pictures, and I mean, I'm sure that there's not a ton of chicken applicants, but when it does happen, I think that it, it can take a substantial amount of time, whereas if you did have a body like Plan Commission just overseeing that kind of thing, and you start to have a process where it comes up at a meeting or every other meeting or whatnot, it might not be a terrible idea. I don't know who was first. Paul Piperon, did you want to speak?
I will just echo what Alder Gray was saying. I do like that idea. My overall point with the building inspector before was just accountability. And if you take a photo and you have people verify that photo, and you're not just doing it yourself, if I took a photo and I sent it in and said everything's fine, I would have an issue with that. But if you're bringing a neighbor or two or whatever we propose for that, that would be a great way of doing it. Now, at the same time, then staff has to deal with photos. Well, I don't know, maybe they could just be emailed them, archived, and there'd be little effort on the city staff. And if there's a problem, then you go back and retrieve that. But if it's just like inbox and file it away and don't even give it another look, and if there's a complaint, then you deal with it, I think that'd be the best approach.
Alder Gray.
So, I mean, part of my thought on that is we're not talking about complex or even permanent structures. I mean, we send a building inspector out if somebody buys a garden shed and puts it in their backyard. A garden shed is a more complex structure than what many coops are going to be. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a thing, that we need a building inspector to go look at it. Maybe we could do something where they can submit pictures and letters from at least 2 neighbors, and if that's not sufficient on their application, or the person reviewing the application doesn't find it sufficient, then they have to pay for an inspector to come out. But I don't know, there's not going to be that many chickens, and it's not a complex structure. I think pictures and signatures should suffice.
Okay, so if that's the route we want to go, what do we want the fee to be is what the conversation comes back to. So if we want to go that route and have then city staff reviewing it here via pictures and the application, then Pat, if you could just, I guess, get us an estimate on the amount that, what fee would be appropriate to cover that. But, oh, Adams, did you have your hand up or you just? Okay, okay. Unless anybody else wants to chime in, I'm okay with however the council wants to go with this. It's been a very interesting conversation. But does anybody else want to chime in here, or is that Mayor Tom?
I think there's been some good conversation on this, but I do feel like we're kind of going in circles to a certain degree. I think when we're talking about a building inspection versus a conditional use permit, as Kyle said, the use on the property, I think we're trying to put everything in one basket for this fee, and then we're trying to put everything into another basket for a fee we're not charging, et cetera. I've had the thought of maybe just saying, you know what, maybe the council doesn't need to deal with this. Maybe it's just a conditional use permit issue, and it's a case-by-case basis, because it seems like we're trying to fit everything into this ordinance, which needs a lot of updating. But unfortunately, I was waiting till we got to the next item to bring this up, but a conditional use permit is not $40, and it's not going to be. Yeah, it is. But again, I think we're trying to accomplish a lot of things and keep the costs low. Maybe it's not about the building inspection per se, about the structural integrity of a chicken coop, but about where it's placed. Because we've had conversations with people that wanted to get the chicken coops that can be movable, which is supposed to be more healthy for a chicken. The issue that we have with that is you could be moving it right next to your property line and it wouldn't be 25 feet away from a structure. So those weren't favorable type of coops. So we wanted a stationary or permanent chicken coop. So I really don't know the way the city wants to go on this, but I think the idea is to try to refine it and make it more simplistic to administrate, and not that there may not be a lot of chicken permits right now, but if they all come due at once, that's probably where the work comes in. And then managing the records or the archives or the photos or whatever, I think we're trying to simplify that process. That's just my 2 cents, I guess I wanted to.
So, I guess I'm very curious about how other municipalities deal with this issue, because clearly we're not the only ones, and I know, Kyle, that you did bring that one example. It just seems to me, I think the mayor's right, there's two different things, and you can't put all your eggs in one basket. Were you trying to allude to that? So I am full of puns this evening. But, yeah, I don't think we should overcomplicate the process and make it cost thousands of dollars for the people that want to have chickens. I really don't want to do that. That's why I kind of, so even having the building inspector inspect that would be less expensive than having them have a conditional land use. However, that doesn't necessarily solve the problem. I mean, I guess the building inspector knows exactly where we would allow, according to the ordinance, the chicken coop to rest. I guess that is, if you're talking about a permanent license, I think it's not that insane to have that, and then a one-time administrative fee. But I think that this is going to have to come back to the COW regardless. And I think just having some options right down on paper for council just to kind of consider and pick up this conversation once more, I think is probably best. Mayor Tom's got his light on. Go ahead, Mayor.
I think the original intent of having the building inspector involved is because we really didn't have another agent of the city. When you send the building inspector, they're taking photos, they're giving documentation to the city to say, this is what I'm reporting that I saw, kind of transfers that responsibility to an agent of the city. I think Trina had mentioned Madison. There's a lot of larger communities that have like code compliance officers, which aren't, police officers or building inspectors or zoning people. They're kind of paid a little bit less, but they can kind of deal with a lot of these things at a lower cost. And we unfortunately don't have the luxury of having someone that falls into that that role. So I think you kind of have to pick one lane or the other. Is it a conditional use issue, or is it something that the building inspector or some agent of the city is going to have to verify on behalf of the property owner? I like the idea that you brought up first, was that just put the onus on the property owner of getting the building inspection, because that relieves the city of a lot of paperwork, I think, and back and forth of trying to contact and schedule it between the homeowner. That makes sense, yeah.
Okay, so I guess we're gonna have this back at the next committee of the whole meeting. Pat's gonna bring forth some estimates as far as, what she thinks the cost is. And I think Kyle was nodding when I was saying if you could give us some examples of different options that we would do. And then Trina, did you have your hand up did you need to chime in?
Oh, no, same thing, I was just hoping to see, a variety of options to choose from and look into, and, you know, maybe just what a couple of cities are doing. Again, I understand we might not quite have the same type of exact inspectors, but I feel like this can and should be so much more simple, and, the homeowner should just need some measuring tape or something to be able to make sure they're far enough off their fence line and whatnot.
Okay, so this will come back then to the next committee of the whole, and kind of still on the subject, then we were going to move on to number 9, which is review and discuss the application to keep chickens and bees at 502 Waterloo Street. And this evening, who's been very patient, we have Hannah Best. Hannah, did you want to chime in with any comments for council at this time?
I guess I'm here to answer any questions if there's anything anybody's wondering about my application or, the chickens and the bees.
Okay. Thank you, Hannah. Hannah, I assume that the bees are honeybees?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess I don't know that much about typical honeybee flight patterns. Are they likely to lift up a ways and go pretty far out and not just directly out through the nearest yards?
Yeah, basically they avoid objects, once they leave the hive. So the hive, where it's placed is sort of, between or where I'd like to place it, I should say, where the photo of the palette, is basically on one side my garage and one side my garden shed. And so, yeah, basically they are going to fly in avoidance of objects. And right now, the hive that I take care of is kept on a farm, where there's a family with like 5 young children. And, so I can, I guess, give the, information that they've not had issues with the children getting stung up by the bees when it's on their property and things like that. They basically are a really gentle type of bee, and the only reason they would become aggravated and sting would be if the hive is disturbed, if somebody were to approach it. That's the only time I've been stung as maintaining the hive is when I basically take the hive apart and start inspecting for if they need more space or if there's any mites. But yeah, they're a gentle type of bee.
Thank you. So I guess my question is, where does this process that we are going through we just discussed during number 8, leave us with Hannah here? Do we just approve her chickens based on our current ordinance, or how do we handle this? Hannah, did you have a timeline of when you were expecting to have the chickens and the bees arrive?
They're all gonna be within the hive. So ideally, I would like to, and it's surprising how quickly that's happening this season.
Yeah.
So that the company survives and survives the bee breeds, which I'm happy about, but I'd like to move the hive, I guess, sooner than later because of that. And the chickens, I'm excited to experiment. I've put a lot of effort into the hoop, and so basically I'm eager, but other than that,
Okay.
no reason to rush it or anything.
Go ahead, Trina.
I suppose I'm assuming that, Hannah, our applicants will likely benefit from the current low rates. She has her application already turned in, and I can't see, midway, switching the price on her at this point.
Thank you, Trina. Alder, I don't know who is first, Alder Gray?
I agree with Trina. I think the fees for Hannah should be what they are right now, and she should be able to move forward with her chickens. And as far as bees go, I mean, there's hives on rooftops in New York City. Like, I don't think that there's any problem with having bees in our community. They're in much larger communities and much more congested communities than ours, and there's not issues. So I think bees are a wonderful thing. We need more of them, and there's no reason not to allow it.
All right. Trina.
Although I'm probably more afraid of bees than I am chickens. I would have to stay far, far away from this yard. But there was Mad City Urban Bees in Madison, and I remember that they would put hives in individual yards of different people in exchange for giving them some of the honey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We definitely need more honeybees. I don't disagree with that. So I'm totally fine with that, and thank you for hosting them, Hannah. I also concur that I really don't think that we should change it up, but I just wanted to get council's idea. I think that Hannah should be able to move forward. She's filled out her application. She's provided pictures that are very detailed, and I really appreciated that. So Alder Pfeiffer has his light on.
First of all, I'd like to say, Ms. Reed, thank you for the laugh. It's late, and I needed that. So I do concur that Ms. Best has turned in her paperwork, and it's under this current ordinance. I think that we have no reason to hold that process up. And I don't like bees either, so I'll stay away too.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we're all pretty much in agreement, is what I'm gathering here. So, all right, if there are no more questions for Hannah, we'll just allow that to be approved.
May I?
You may.
I have absolutely no objection to any of this moving forward, except for one thing, which is the city has no process and no fee for a B application or a B permit. So at some point in time, the council should at least set a fee or decide not to set a fee. And then I think application process in greater detail as time goes on, but if the city is going to set a fee for bees, it should do so at its next meeting and then figure out what that fee is going to be.
Going to be, sorry, I can't help it. Alder Gray.
I, at first, would be in favor of there being absolutely no fee for bees. I think it's something that's good for our environment, and there shouldn't be a fee associated with it. They're naturally occurring. It's not like she's bringing in something that doesn't belong here. I don't believe there should be a fee.
Okay. Alder Adams.
I want to second Alder Gray's no fee. Yeah, we need more of these, not less. Sorry, Trina.
Oh, no. I know, and I'm leaning towards a bee fee. Not due to my bee hate, just, I feel like there, will probably be just slight, clerical expenses.
Right now, there's no application process at all,
Yeah,
so there's no
there's
expense.
that. There's that.
Okay, Kyle?
I agree, pollinators are pretty important and in great need right now. With the lack of process, there's also a lack of any limitations. So I just want to make sure if the intent is to have no restrictions on the amount and location of where you can have these, then we don't need any of that. If the intent is there may be locations or limitations on number of hives, how close to sensitive populations should the neighbors be notified of a hive, or if you're going to have multiple hives, those are just things that if there's a desire to address them, we would want to do that at the outset versus if there was right next to a daycare or something like that, we have 5 or 10 hives right up to the fence. That may be an issue for neighboring landowners, and if we don't have any standards, that could be an issue where we have to allow it. So just
Yeah.
staff-wise, we would want to know if there's other things you're looking to incorporate into a process.
Sure. I think there definitely has to be some kind of process for bees in the future too. Yeah. A lot of people are allergic to bees, obviously. I mean, if a situation like Kyle just described could be bad. I don't know between Ian or Trina. I think Ian was first. Go ahead.
I wouldn't be against having some standards for beekeeping. I don't think that there needs to be any fees or licenses, but having standards that are enforceable would be a good thing. And then it would just, again, fall to be more complaint-based. I mean, it could also fall under like a nuisance ordinance and things of that nature if they become a nuisance. Creating some standards for how many bees and how close they can be kept, et cetera, that's not a bad idea. But I don't think it's an urgent need for the city, and I think in the meantime, it could easily fall under a nuisance. Like if there are too many or they're right next to a daycare and kids are getting stung, you could file a complaint under a nuisance.
Trina, did you still want to chime in?
Oh, yes, so I would definitely still like small fee, we need some basic standards, some limitations on location and number of hives, depending on the size of the yard and what's nearby. And I would still want to do the mailings out to the local neighbors. But I wouldn't want to send out building inspectors to check on the hives.
Mayor Tom.
Well, I'm really surprised that Paul mentioned this because I was actually not going to say anything. The one thing I noticed when this application came in is that there's an application to keep bees on a chicken permit. And since I'm probably one of the only people, maybe besides Trina, that went through the process of creating the chicken ordinance, it was quite cumbersome and took quite a bit of time to create. Section 14-7 says keeping of animals. The City of Columbus Municipal Code provides that no person shall keep, sell, or offer for any or offer for sale any horses, cows, pigs, goats, sheep, bees, rabbits, chickens, geese, ducks, or other fowl. It's the reason we went down the route, I guess, of trying to allow for chickens and define on how many chickens you could have and under what circumstances. And I feel like I'm okay with whatever the council wants to do moving forward, but if you're going to create more confusion by taking something off of a list that says you can't have them, but if you can get authorization from the city council, this is going to occur every time you have an application if you don't have an application process or a fee for an animal. So if someone applies to keep a goat at their house, do you want to have that conversation every time someone asks Pat if they can get a goat application? That's my concern, just the long-term streamlining of how you deal with these concerns, and maybe it is just, amending or updating that section of the code to provide some clarity, because to me, it's not clear. It says, here's what you can't have, but if the city council says you can have it, you can, but we don't have a process to do it. That's not going to kind of help anybody in the future streamline the process, and that's, I just wanted to say that. We don't have to have that discussion tonight. Maybe there will be more information that comes out at the next meeting when we start looking at the ordinance update on the chicken permit, et cetera. But I had to say something.
Okay. All right, with that, I think we are going to move on. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you all for discussing that, and I appreciate all your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay, so we'll move on then to, let's see, number 10. Review and discuss special event electronic appliance recycling vendor pricing for 2021, the special event electronics, and the recycling dates. So for that, tonight we have the Director of DPW, Dave, with us on Zoom. Dave Sternberger. Hi, Dave.
Hello, how's everybody tonight?
Doing well.
Great. So, yeah, this item before you, just a little bit of a change was prompted because Columbia County notified us that they'll no longer accept refrigerant-based appliances and some electronics. So the city's, had an electronics and appliance recycling event for probably the last 6 or 7 years. So we did do some research, went out, and we found a number of vendors. In the packet tonight, we're recommending one particular vendor called Refrigerant Depot. What we found is that they will take all types of refrigerant-based appliances at no charge because they are a recycler. Things like dehumidifiers and window air conditioners and refrigerators. And they do take most forms of electronics, but for a much cheaper fee. And they provide containers for residents who drop items off at no fee. Whereas before, the dumpster rental was $200 with Columbia County. So overall, I think it's a win because it's going to cost the city less, and it will cost residents less, and we'll be able to recycle more items.
So are these, within the packet, are these the actual flyers that are going to go out, Dave?
Yes.
Okay. And do we just mail these out to every residence, or do they go in with the utility bill, or how does that?
Yeah, I think on the second page here of the memo, you need to we need approval later than, well, it says March 15th in order to be included in the April bill.
Got it.
And I think the next meeting, if this will get approval, is on the 16th. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll have to work with Water and Light to see if we can squeeze a day.
Okay. Trina, go ahead.
Well, first off, Dave, thank you for finding such a great deal for the city.
I wish I could take the credit, but it's on my staff. They did a really nice job on research, so I have to give them credit.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, and modest leader too. Fantastic. Yeah, I'm just so surprised at how many items are available to be dropped off for no charge. And I'm so happy to hear that, a lot of these things at least partially be recycled. That is excellent news. Oh, my question was, will there still be some dumpsters available? Besides, on these specific drop-off days for items?
We still have a dumpster down at the DPW yard, and it allows people to drop large bulk items off for a fee.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So would they pay essentially the same fee ahead of time when they drop it off, or would it be a different fee?
We do have a bit of a fee schedule at the office, so like, a lot of the items we end up seeing are mattresses. But, there is a set disposal fee for a mattress.
Sounds good. And then otherwise, individuals can always bring stuff to like the Columbia County dump and pay them, or?
Well, not electronics or refrigerant-based appliances. They won't take those.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for finding a gem.
Any other questions or comments for Dave? Mayor Tome?
The one thing I appreciate seeing on here is that they're registered with the DNR, the EPA, et cetera, and also that they will supply basically a follow-up of what they collected back to the city, which is, I think, a great idea to show how effective the program is. So, job well done.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. And let's see here. We're going to move on then to number 11, which is review and discuss the DPW's copy machine upgrade. And Dave's going to hang around with us for that as well. What's going on with the copier over there?
So we've got a copy machine that's about 6 years old, and it is starting to have more and more problems. Paper jams, scanner roller jams. Occasionally have to reboot it because it loses network connection, things like that. So again, we did some research, interviewed multiple vendors, and we are coming to you with a recommendation this evening to enter into a lease with Wisconsin Copy for a newer Kyocera, it's a copy print machine. And it's not significant savings, but it is savings. We take every penny, right? It's about we estimate we'll save about $128 a year. So the machine that we have is no longer under a lease. The lease expired. But we continue to have it maintained at the same monthly rate. So another thing is that the newer machine would give us the capability to print 11 by 17 copies, which we don't have that capability right now with the current machine. We actually had an instance today where 11 by 17 would come in very handy. one lane because we were doing a sewer lateral repair. And the contractor asked for some drawings to show pipe depth and cross sections, things like that. But we couldn't scale the drawings off the GIS to a legal-sized piece of paper. So we ended up taping things together. But
I've been there.
11x17 is actually standard size for small prints. So it would be helpful in that respect as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, this is, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. I think you're going to get a newer machine with more capabilities for less money. It's kind of hard to challenge that. Does anybody have any questions for Dave?
And both agreements were sent to Paul for review.
Okay.
He's checked them all around. Did he get any issues with them?
The only issue that I had, Dave, was on the lease agreement for the copy machine itself and the commencement date, which is a rather important date in the big scheme of things with the Wells Fargo part of this. Commencement date doesn't show up anywhere, and they get to decide when it is. You just need to somewhere, somehow, some way, you need to make sure that you understand what that date is. It's defined in the agreement as whenever we tell you it is. But that's what starts your 5-year lease, and that's what starts your monthly payments. And I don't think there's anything you need to do to fix this document. It's just a matter of making sure when you're all done, that you know what that date is. Otherwise, I had no concerns.
Okay. I don't see any concerns from council. Any questions or concerns? Okay. All right. So go ahead and move forward with that, with Paul's recommendation of at least knowing when that date is that your lease commences. And then for number 12, we have review and discuss community development investment grant support. And for that, this evening, we have Matt Schreiber. Hi, Matt.
Oh, how is everybody this evening?
Just dandy. Thank you.
So what you have in front of you is a sample resolution along with a memo, which essentially, why don't I start with the project first? So the properties on the corner of James and Ludington are right now under contract. So it's 101 East James, 107 East James, and 118 Ludington. So you probably want to know the businesses that are in there. So it's Cardinal Embroidery, Columbus Black Belt Academy, and Mount Wisconsin. So the three buildings on the corner. The group that is purchasing the property is planning a substantial renovation of the building to basically retrofit the residential units on the upper levels, which I've been through the building. The units up there have been mothballed for quite some time. I don't think anybody's lived up there in at least a decade, maybe 2 decades. So it's kind of exciting to see somebody who wants to invest in the downtown with a mixed-use kind of component. One of the things they've requested is the Community Development Investment Grant through WDC, which is a relatively newer grant program through WDC that specifically targets rural downtowns, and they help with a number of things, but one of them being historic preservation and renovation type projects, which these check both of those boxes. So really the big thing is the city, in supporting this grant application, the big thing that you're committing to is we are basically going to be the pass-through to the developer from the state. So basically what that means is there is going to be some administrative time which we do not get paid for to basically submit some receipts and do some other paperwork as the project is being reimbursed. So I talked with WDC. Really what it means is roughly about 20 hours of staff time over the course of the grant is what the expectation is from WBC. I did put some information in your packet. I didn't put the whole proposal that I've got in the packet because it was rather large. And if you want to see the packet, please email me. I can send you a copy of what I have to date. But really, I wanted to introduce this project tonight. It basically confirmed that council supports this project and move this to the 16th meeting for to adopt a resolution in support of the grant application. I would note that the grant application, a complete version would be ready by the meeting on the 16th. Also, CAVA has been on all night. I don't know if you have any questions for CAVA, is the developer in this project. I don't know if you have any questions for him or if you want to say anything at this time, but at this point I'll open it to council for questions.
Mayor Tolm?
I don't have a question really, but I'm really glad to see this project. It's substantial for downtown and would be happy to support this resolution at the next meeting. I think, Matt, as a staff member, I think is bringing this forward. That's telling that he wants to help support that investment down there as our economic development director and planner too. So I don't have any questions, just really glad to see a project like this come to our downtown. Welcome.
Trina?
Well, I'm also very happy and excited to hear about the renovations. Wondering, will the storefronts be changed at all, or the focus is really going to be in the apartments?
The changes to the storefronts from what I saw in the proposal would be minimal. I mean, really, honestly, the lower levels on those buildings are in pretty good shape. The upper levels need the most work. I do know also the roof was part of the proposal package. I think there was some roof work that needed to be done. But I do think there was some work on the lower level, but I would say it's minimal.
Thank you.
I'm just in complete support for this as well, and thanks, Matt, for being willing to help out, and I'm just glad that this whole program is available and that it's going to be a step in the right direction for our downtown. So that's great. I see Paul Pfeifferon's got his light on. Go ahead, Paul.
I guess I would like to say that I'm excited for this project as well. I think many of us are, including myself, are wanting the downtown to be revitalized, and I think this is a great first step. My only question is, how do we address parking? Because behind there is really seems like it's tight parking, and I guess the allure of renting in the downtown is off-street parking, and if you park in the city lot down a block, that could remedy it, but that's not the most convenient thing in the world. I'm just wondering, is there any potential thought on parking?
Yeah, I can interject that. You're right. I mean, there's going to be limited off-street parking. I mean, when these buildings were built over 100 years ago, the automobile wasn't what it is today. So things were designed differently back then. I think the things that could be considered by council or could be proposed. I mean, obviously, people are allowed to park on the streets right now as it is. The other item would be, the Whitney building utilizes the parking lot kind of behind that building on Water Street. Is there a public lot nearby where we could have a similar arrangement? Now, the agreement with the Whitney building, and that was done so long ago, I'm not sure what the agreement was between the CDDC and the city, but there clearly was some sort of agreement. Those are the kinds of things we can consider, I think, or council could consider to maybe alleviate some of those issues. But being that it's an already built environment, adding the 6 units, you're right, there's going to be additional parking. But there to be creative solutions to that issue.
Thank you. I was just wondering if there were creative solutions in the works that that you can elaborate on. But I appreciate your honesty and you just look forward and maybe we come up with a different approach.
Okay. Any more comments or questions for Matt or Kava? Nope. Okay. Sounds like that's okay to move forward. Thank you, Matt. Now it's number 14. It's convened to close session per state. Oh, did I skip one? Oh, sorry, Matt. One more. 13, review and discuss comprehensive plan update. So we still have Matt. Thank you.
This one really won't take all that long, so we can get to the close session. I just wanted to give an update on where we're at with the comprehensive plan. I know it's been lagging out there. Plan Commission has basically reviewed draft chapters for every draft chapter. There are draft chapters out on our website right now. Essentially, the Plan Commission has scheduled a meeting for a public hearing on April 1st, and insert your joke there, I guess, but that was the date that seemed to work. And it really, I have a timeline laid out here. The earliest, council could potentially adopt the plan is April 5th. At this point, my big concern has been making sure that the final draft is out there, and if people can review it and comment on it. It's been out there for at least 3 or 4 or 5 months now, some chapters, and I have not really received any comments other than what I've received from my commission. So it's one of those things where this probably can go as quick as needed, or kind of like the utility, it can go as slow as needed. But as far as the chapters, most of the heavy lifting is done and it's written. So I just kind of want to make everyone aware. I intend to get some sort of paper copy of the draft plan into every council member here before the next meeting, and basically kind of work this to the finish line, and hopefully get this adopted here in the near future. So I just wanted to give an update on the comp plan. I know Plan Commission, those who are on Plan Commission have heard me talk about this probably for a while now. So I just wanted the council to be aware of what's going on. Any questions about the comprehensive plan?
Go ahead, Ian.
Less of a question, more of a thought. I think that it's something that we should probably consider bringing to like an informational meeting or at a cow or something for the new council, since the public meets the day before a new council will be elected. Like even intending to try and adopt it April 5th would just, and half the council won't be very well informed on it. So maybe the first council meeting or second council meeting with them to, make sure everyone knows what's going on.
Understood. I would just note that one of the things that I want to do with this plan and moving forward is having an executive summary that basically outlines the goals, objectives, policies, and plan recommendations. When you look at the comprehensive plan, there's a lot that you have to write to meet the state statute. A lot of that really doesn't apply to the policymakers. So having a abbreviated version that really gets to the nuts and bolts of what it means to the policymakers, I think is needed. I think that's always kind of a missing piece when people do comp plans. So that I agree with your thoughts. I just threw out there as the 5th, trying to work towards a date here with the council we have to maybe consider this, but I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah, I think the 5th would be a good time to bring out that executive summary and go over with the new council, and then maybe try for the next meeting.
So, Ian, to be clear, the 5th would be before the new council.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because
Oh,
the 6th is the, we've moved that meeting to a Monday.
Okay, yeah, it's 9:30 at night.
Yep. I think, I think what Matt is kind of leaning towards is the fact that this isn't gone on in secrecy. This has been through Plan Commission for several months. Matt has spent enormous amounts of time on it. I don't think that, it seems like, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, do you have a executive summary currently put together? Or are you hoping to put one together?
No, I have a draft, but it's not on the website yet. It's
Okay.
still, it's not final.
Okay. I guess,
But I'll have a, what?
go ahead.
No, but the 9 chapters are done. Like
Yes.
The actual plan itself is done. The executive summary is not a statutory requirement. It's something that I feel is needed.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I'm not sure. I don't want to say, hey, let's bring it to this next meeting when I'm not, it's going to be my last meeting. But I guess I don't see an issue with it having been developed in such a public fashion and available for so long. So I guess I don't think it's inherently very political or controversial when there's been so much input from, Plan Commission and from other groups. But I think also just in the fact that it's been readily available and feedback is welcomed, I don't see it being overly political. I don't have a problem myself. I don't have a problem approving it the way that it is. But I do think that the idea of sharing an executive summary within the first couple of council meetings, within the first few council meetings for the new members would be very beneficial. But that's my 2 cents. You guys can decide what you'd like to do. Go ahead, Paul Pfeiffer.
My 2 cents would be, I guess, the same thing. I mean, at first I was thinking, like, I was agreement that wait till next council, but this, we could easily handle this, and it's just one less thing for the new people to have to put any thought into and worry about, because we already have a lot of information behind us. And it'd be like having to reinvent the wheel, re-educate, and this way we can sit, in the words of whatever time it is, get her done.
Mm-hmm. Mayor Tome.
I don't really have any preference on when this is adopted either. I think I remember, I was on the Plan Commission when we started the conversation about updating this. It's statutory requirements, it's public input, community engagement, and I think Matt's put a lot of time into dealing with this. I think it's probably overwhelming for most people to see a document like a comprehensive plan and to read it and understand it. When I first got elected to council, I spent a lot of time reading the older version of the comprehensive plan, and it's very interesting, but there's not really a whole lot to argue over. It's data and it's information that's been compiled according to statutes, and that there's 9 chapters you have to follow. My main wish or concern would be is that along with the comprehensive plan, I think we kind of ran the 2050 roadmap program kind of parallel to that, and I think that there's information that kind of went one way or the other, but there were community engagement efforts and survey information and data that kind of were shared between both of them. So it would be very nice if the council could adopt both resolutions at the same time, because I think they're companions to one another. One has statutory requirements and one was more done locally for planning purposes, but I think it's important to capture both of them at the same time, and I think the roadmap's obviously been sitting out there for a while with the transition we've gone through in the last year, but I think they should both kind of end up at the same place at the same time, regardless of when that is.
And I'd kind of like to see you have your stamp on that, since you're the one that kind of spearheaded the entire thing, so I think that would be fair to you as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's with all the conversations we're having right now about, stormwater and transportation, utility, et cetera, I think when you look at the numbers, we really kind of get stuck on some of the recommendations that were given in there, and that doesn't really mean anything at this point. It's kind of a guide to look and say, okay, if we want to realize this project, you kind of adjust the numbers for whatever the times are, if it's 6 months from now or 6 years from now. But the survey information and the community engagement efforts, I think it can't be lost, that until you do another survey, that's what you have right now, so.
It's valuable, yeah, I agree. Is everybody okay with then, Matt, I guess, bringing that forward on the 5th then? Resolution?
My only, if you're gonna have, I know that there are requirements for public hearings for the plan commission, et cetera. If there are significant concerns that come out of that public hearing, obviously, Matt should adjust his timeline to what he thinks is appropriate, but, sometimes you have these public hearings and, there's no response. And so I think if things go according to what Matt's planning on, he should do whatever he sees, fit, I guess.
Appropriate,
But
yeah.
if there are things that he feels like needs to be adjusted or addressed, then just take your time.
Yeah, and who knows what you're gonna get when you have a public hearing, but I kind of anticipate that it probably won't be much in the way of comments. Based on some of my past experience doing comp plans for smaller communities, but you just don't know until you actually get basically do it. So, and that's why there's some flexibility into it, and that's why the last paragraph in the memo is written the way it is. I don't want to be perceived as pushing something through if there's a lot of things that people have questions on. But as Katie alluded to, this has been done and discussed in numerous plan commission meetings, so it's not like it's been done in secret, so.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Okay, now we're going to move on to number 14, which is to convene to close session per state statute 19.85 sub 1 sub E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically to discuss the purchase of the property in the city of Columbus.
Make a motion that we move into closed session for the reasons read.
I will second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to move into closed session. Pat, would you please take a roll call?
Adams?
Aye.
Gray?
Aye.
Piperone?
Aye.
Reed?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Tome?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, we'll be reconvening then in the closed session Zoom.
And no more action will be taken this evening, so we will not be live on air cable channel. Is that correct? All right, so good night, everybody.